Aquaculture globally it's a huge food security issue. The world's oceans produce about 90 million metric tons of seafood from the wild harvest, and that peaked in the early 1990s. Our total harvest of seafood is now at 140 million metric tons. The entire increase has come from aquaculture, from fish farming. That has to keep up with, right now, world population is about 7 billion people, and that's increasing exponentially. In order to keep up with that, we're going to have to double aquaculture production of seafood in the next 20 years. The work that we're doing is directed at improving U.S. aquaculture. This is important to the country because the U.S. has a tremendous deficit, a trade deficit in seafood. It's $10 billion a year. It's one of the leading items in our trade deficit, behind oil. And so here in North Carolina, we have a very vibrant aquaculture industry. We grow a number of species, examples being catfish, rainbow trout. And we started the hybrid striped bass farming, pond farming industry in North Carolina in the late 1980s. These fish are extremely difficult to reproduce. We produce this hybrid between striped bass, they're about 1 meter long, and white bass that are just a few inches long. Those species have to be synchronized to breed at the same time. They have to be treated with hormones, given certain temperature cues, and then all the fertilization is done in vitro. They have to be stripped of their gametes to fertilize them. So we're essentially running a kind of IVF clinic for aquatic cows. The technology is daunting. They're amongst the most difficult fish, farm fish to breed in the world, and we've developed a lot of expertise with that. Almost all farm fishes have reproductive problems. The striped bass is a classic example. About half of the females in a given year fail to produce viable offspring. And we've been working over 20 years to identify the nature of the problem and the causes of the problem. We've been biopsying fish, subjecting them to ovarian biopsies, and measuring expression of tens of thousands of genes simultaneously in those biopsy samples to understand the genetic basis for reproductive dysfunction, poor egg quality. We have to use artificial intelligence, procedures, tools called artificial neural networks to make sense of the data. And we can't use an ordinary desktop computer or laptop computer to do those analyses. We have to use cloud computing, where we have many, many powerful computers linked together in order simply to do the calculations, perform the calculations. And these networks learn. We train these networks and they learn. And most recently, we've been able to identify out of this perhaps 20,000 genes or more expressed in the ovary, we've been able to identify 93 out of 20,000 that are critical determinants of egg quality. Because we know when these genes are expressed, as it turns out, this reproductive problem, these huge 4-year-old fish, meter long, are experiencing, are happening when those fish are probably a few millimeters long. The environment that they're experiencing then is causing a reproductive problem that we're having with them in the hatchery when they're 4 years old, when they're 10 pounds. In this way, our classical breeding work, selective breeding that we do, is married to these advanced technologies, and all of it fits together pretty seamlessly to enable us to solve problems, practical problems that the farmers experience. Bioinformatics, the ability to make sense of biological information, that is the area that we need to improve in. And I see the day where every biologist is trained in that discipline as a fundamental introductory exercise.